when we're going through the process, for the vast majority of whatever we're doing, whether it be starting a business, investing, or starting a new fitness program, when we're starting out, we have to do so at 80% of our capacity, not 110%. This is the lie that we're told. When we look at many of the different fitness influencers or business influencers, the people who are existing in this hustle culture, they're bullshitting us. They're saying that we need to give everything we've got when that's not true. That's not part of discipline. That's part of willpower. And willpower dies when our force of will ends. We need to hold back. And it's counterintuitive. It's difficult as hell when you're in the midst of discipline, but that's the biggest part of discipline that people miss. We have to slow down. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. I'm so glad you're here today. Thanks for joining me. I want to talk about discipline. No. Not the discipline that implies punishment or, some kind of weird fetish. No, not that kind of discipline. What I'm talking about today is the type of discipline that we all have trouble with, where we want to pursue a dream or a goal or something that we want to achieve. And we struggle to achieve it because we don't have that D word, discipline. And I heard this a lot when I started getting into triathlon or telling people about my triathlon journey. They said, wow, how do you stay so disciplined? And of course that question made me have to think back on my life, on areas in my life where I did have discipline and where I didn't, because I have lived in both extremes. I've lived in my life where there are certain things where I did have discipline and certain things where I just couldn't practice discipline. And remembering back, that's what allowed me to kind of, as I reflected on my life and reflected on where I had discipline and where I didn't have discipline, it allowed me to really identify those key components, those key things that can help us to maintain and build in more discipline into our lives in the directions of our achievements. And I think a lot of us have some good ideas on where that discipline comes from, but we tend to muddy the waters a lot when we talk about discipline because we say that we need more things. We tend to confuse discipline with willpower, which is just not true. Discipline and willpower are two completely different things. Willpower is when you are pushing as hard as you can or pushing to the limit, despite the fact that your effort level has some limitation there. And so eventually you succumb to your effort level and your willpower goes away. So you cannot do that anymore. But discipline comes in where we're actually building our capacity, building our energy, building on all of this stuff so that over time, that discipline that we're practicing is creating vaster energy. So discipline can be infinite. Willpower is finite. But yeah, looking back on my own life, I look back on this because I realized that there were, a few simple things, 3 in particular, that go into discipline that are wildly important. And I think we intuitively know 1 or 2 of them. But there are a couple of these ideas that we don't implement, we ignore, or we neglect to our peril. In fact, we also often go the opposite direction. And so I want to share these key components of them, because if you can implement these 3 things, these 3 important components of discipline, then you can start to build on that. Now, I remember times in my own life where I was able to have discipline in my own life, where I was able to stay disciplined, and areas of my own life where I wasn't able to stay disciplined. And particularly in my younger life before I got sober, which was a big transformational moment for me. I remember 2 distinct, kind of opposite ends of the spectrum for me. The first was when I played cello in high school. There was a period of time distinctly before my sophomore year of high school where I just wasn't into it. I wasn't into playing music or the cello or anything like that. And I wasn't very good. I sat in the last chair of the orchestra and just kind of shadowed by my way to, to high school's last chair stardom. But in my sophomore year, or right before my sophomore year, something clicked. And I realized that, hey, I see somebody in that first chair that is doing something amazing. They're incredible. They're making it to the all-national youth string orchestra. They're going to Berkeley next year because of the cello. Maybe this can open up some doors for me if I actually applied myself. That was the thing that clicked in me. And that first thing that clicked in me was this idea of now there's a meaning behind it. Now there's a purpose behind wanting to get good that actually meant something. I had a chance to go to college. There was an achievement-oriented goal to it. So I began to apply effort. I got a coach, a teacher, somebody who could teach me how to play the cello correctly, teach me how to be disciplined, teach me how to practice. And I put in the discipline and it worked. And I got really good and I got into college. And so that was the success story of what discipline could do for me. And it all required, before we even get into the three things that discipline requires when you're in the midst of it, the very first thing that you should think about is, does this pursuit have a significant meaning behind it? And that meaning, by the way, has to be more than just, I want to be rich, or I want to have a Maserati. I want to have the things. It has to transcend the things, the tangible assets, so to speak. It has to have a meaning behind it that brings you into this space of purpose, so that when you look back on that achievement, that pursuit, you can look back on it. Think of yourself on your deathbed or 20 years from now or whenever. You can look back on that achievement, or that not just the achievement itself, but the pursuit, and say, man, I'm so proud of myself for doing that. I've heard of very, very few people that look back on their lives and say, man, I'm very, very proud of that Maserati that I was able to buy. But they do look back on, man, I was really proud of that business I was able to build. Because I employed so many people. Man, I'm so proud of that podcast that I started because I shared my message with people. Man, I'm so proud of those relationships that I built because I was able to have a meaningful connection with someone else. Those are the kinds of purposes we need. So when you're thinking of that meaning, you have to have a meaning behind it. Before I looked at the idea of the meaning that I wanted behind the cello, I didn't have a meaning and I didn't have a purpose. And so wasn't able to stay disciplined. But after that, after I had some meaning, had some purpose, got the coach, got some discipline, I was able to. And then I want to contrast that with another part of my life where I wasn't able to stay disciplined. Throughout my early 20s, I was in the midst of my alcoholism and drinking and anxiety and all that kind of stuff, but I still had the same kind of desires as everyone else. I wanted to have I wanted to have 6-pack abs. I wanted to have the chest that actually looked like a guy's chest, not just a flat, like weird looking chest. I wanted to be muscular. I wanted to be strong. I wanted to look good. And now as you think about that for a second, does that really pass the test of looking back on your deathbed and looking back at your 20-year-old self and saying, man, I'm really proud of myself for looking good or having 6-pack abs? No, not really. What would have had more meaning is like something around the health idea. Like I want to be healthy. I want to be healthy for my kids, or I want to be healthy. But clearly I wasn't practicing that level of health because I was drinking myself into oblivion. So there was a lot of lack of alignment, a lot of lack of consistency there. So I pursued one of these infomercial products that I saw late at night on television, where, the celebrity fitness coach was really doing these crazy wild workouts, like pull-ups with one arm, push-ups with one hand. I don't know why we have to do one-arm push-ups. We have two perfectly good ones. But anyway, he was doing all these crazy workouts. I'm like, man, I want to do that because he's got 6-pack abs and I'll get 6-pack abs if I do that. But alas, I started the program, and the first day I felt wonderful. The second day I felt kind of sore. And the third day I basically said, and children, put your earmuffs on, but I said, fuck this shit, because that guy's a jerk and he's trying to kill me. Not only that, but I ended up injuring myself and injuring my shoulder, which was because I wasn't really following the form and I was just being stupid. So in a nutshell, I gave up on it. And that was kind of my MO for most of the fitness programs that I ran into. I would have a desire, a superficial desire to get 6-pack abs. I would try the program. I would do it for a few days and I would say, F this, I'm done. And that's not discipline. So discipline can't be created without meaning. So the very first part of that is that it has to have some powerful meaning behind it. What is driving you to want to be disciplined about this? Ironman triathlon is a great example because, for some, it may just be this kind of ego or superficial desire to like show off. And if it's not giving you deep and personal meaning, if it's there to like serve somebody else or try and like impress somebody else, then it's not going to work. You have to do it for your own heart. For me, when I actually did get sober, when I did look at the Ironman triathlon, I realized that, hey, this is something that I can continue to pursue that will bring me greater life. It will enhance my identity. It will help me to transcend even more of these health issues that I've had to create optimal health. And if I look back on, if I do that test of looking back on my deathbed at that, I would see that would make me proud and very happy and smile. And of course it does. Looking back on it today, it's a time in my life that I value deeply. And that was the difference with discipline. And there were a few aspects in those journeys that helped me beyond just the meaning part, which is a prerequisite for discipline, by the way. That meaning is a prerequisite for discipline. But there are a few other things, 3 other things, in fact, that I want to share that can help you implement greater discipline. These are the 3 parts of discipline that I think that we tend to miss out on occasionally. Now, the problem is that we tend not to, just as I did. We either don't start on something because we have a big goal, we have a big dream. So think of it this way. If you have that meaning behind a dream, say you want to pursue the Ironman triathlon, say you want to start that business and build a business that employs hundreds of people. The problem is that a lot of times we just don't start because we feel like the dream that we have is way up there and we're way down here and we can't conceive of how we get there from here. Our ego gets in the way because our ego doesn't understand change. And so we don't connect the dots. We don't figure out how we can do that. So we just don't start. And then the second thing is that we do start to pursue our dream, but we fall into this belief that we're sold, this lie that we're told in the mainstream that we have to give everything we've got, 110% all the time in order to be successful. And unfortunately, what that leads to is we fall short. And because we can't maintain that 110% is not sustainable, despite what Johnny Biceps on the television tells us that 110% that we're giving is sustainable. It's all BS. It's not. We can't sustain that. So when we inevitably fail or burn out or injure ourselves, the worst part about that lie that we're told by the mainstream is that we feel responsible. We feel like we're to blame because we can't stay disciplined, because we didn't have the discipline to continue on. And it's the tragedy of giving up too soon, is falling into those traps of not starting because we won't feel like we can achieve it. That self-doubt gets in the way, or going too hard and too fast and burning out, and then believing that we can't do it because it's on us. And the parts of discipline that I want to talk about touch on those 2 things and are the solutions to that, so that we can avoid the pain of feeling like the dreams that fill us up are not possible for us. So I'm going to share with you these things. And the first part of discipline that we have to maintain, that I think we all inherently know, is that we have to stay consistent. Consistency is the key to success. It's absolutely true. We have to stay consistent with our pursuit. That means that we have a plan on how to pursue whatever we're doing. It could be a business plan. It could be a fitness plan. It could be a relationship plan, whatever it may be. But the key is that we not just have the plan, but we follow it with consistency. We stick to it. And we don't shame ourselves if we miss something. We just course correct and we keep going. That's what consistency is all about. That consistency part is really important. I think we know that inherently that's what's required for discipline. And I think that a lot of people don't, when they're thinking about discipline, they're thinking about consistency. They're thinking about, well, how can I stay consistent? And the truth is that discipline and consistency are not the same thing, but consistency is a part of discipline. So we have to stay consistent. But where a lot of people tend to fall short, where they tend to miss out, is not in their ability to not stay consistent. Because I truly believe that with a plan and with the capacity and with the commitment and the meaning behind it, people can stay consistent. Regardless of who's listening to this, if you have a big enough meaning behind or purpose behind what you're pursuing, you can stay consistent with a plan. But where we fall short is with these next two. And the first one is that is the amount that we challenge ourselves. It's important to note that part of discipline is tapping into the right amount of challenge for us at any given time. One of the reasons that we feel like we can't achieve our goals and we don't even start is because we feel like that the distance between us and our dream is insurmountable. So we don't even try. We don't even start. Or we're so afraid of that it's overwhelming. But the point, so what we have to do is we have to work backwards from that goal. We have to work backwards to find the very next target that's right in front of us, so that that next step right in front of us really just pushes us just a few percent beyond our comfort zone. Just 5% is all it takes. So think about the next step on the way to that big, hairy, audacious goal that you have that can get you just 5% closer to your dream. What is that next step that gets you just 5% closer to your dream? Now, in the pursuit of the Ironman, for me, this was all about the thing that scared me the most was the swim part of the race. Like I could swim, like, quote unquote, like in the ocean, play around in the surf and or in pools, but I was by no means a swimmer. The idea of swimming past the shore break terrified me. But if I wanted to be an Ironman triathlete, I had to learn to not just swim past the breakers, but do so with hundreds of other athletes punching and kicking and submerging one another over the course of 2.4 miles. Now, looking at that from the perspective of what I was as a beginner, it would have seemed impossible. I would have scared myself out of it. But taking that step back, working backwards to where I was at, I realized that the next 5% step in front of me was learning to float in a pool. That was the step I needed to take. Just learn to float in a pool. And when I mastered that, I graduated to the next 5%, and the next 5%, and the next 5%, so on, so that by the following year, I was able to swim past the breakers, punching and kicking my way through the 2.44 miles of open water to finish my first Ironman. That's how we do it. Discipline comes in each step by just challenging ourselves the right amount. So this is also a part of flow, which Mihai Csikszentmihalyi talks about in his flow research studies, that part of one of the elements of flow is the fact that we're challenging ourselves consistently just beyond our comfort zone, that we're constantly pushing beyond our comfort zone. And the point is that we just nudge our comfort zone outward. We don't try and leapfrog way beyond it, because then we scare ourselves out of it. We have my fitness experience where I pushed too hard, too fast, and I burned out. But instead, we just nudge. We just nudge our comfort zone out 5% at a time. And over time, you'll find that, you'll get to the starting line of your next thing gradually, step by step, not by pushing over it. So we have The first two parts of discipline, consistency, we have to stay consistent. Second part is challenging ourselves just enough to make it worthwhile and to give ourselves that capacity to make it exciting, but not push ourselves too hard. Call that 5%. That's the 5% rule. And then the final piece, and this is the one that a lot of people neglect because they think it's counterintuitive. But it is an important part of discipline. This is where the difference between discipline and willpower come into play, because this is where discipline sticks, and it's slowing down. In any step, we have to slow down in order to speed up. We have to, when we're starting out or when we're going through the process, for the vast majority of whatever we're doing, whether it be starting a business, investing, or starting a new fitness program, when we're starting out, we have to do so at 80% of our capacity, not 110%. This is the lie that we're told. When we look at many of the different fitness influencers or business influencers, the people who are existing in this hustle culture, they're bullshitting us. They're saying that we need to give everything we've got when that's not true. That's not part of discipline. That's part of willpower. And willpower dies when our force of will ends. We need to hold back. And it's counterintuitive. It's difficult as hell when you're in the midst of discipline, but that's the biggest part of discipline that people miss. We have to slow down in order to get faster. We have to give 80%, not 110%. Why? Because that helps us to keep going. Giving 80% over time means that you're still giving more than someone who gives 110% for 3 days, then gives up. 80% keeps us going. And this follows a scientific method too, because Phil Maffetone, who was a famous endurance coach and physician, actually trained his athletes to do the vast majority of their endurance training at 80% capacity, at a heart rate that was typically about 80% of their maximum heart rate. And what that did was it gave those athletes, including myself, this Maffetone method is exactly how I went from zero athlete to world championship qualifying athlete. I did so by giving 80% consistently over time. But that Maffetone method, athletes are able to manage the volume, to build the volume while giving it 80% capacity. So what happens when they're doing that, when they're giving that 80%, is their capacity is increasing. Their energy is increasing. They are getting faster under that same heart rate over time. So that even though that first part where they're first starting, where it seems ridiculously slow and ridiculously easy and feels like they're not doing anything, what's happening over time is they're getting faster under that same effort. So they're not giving any more effort, but they're getting faster. And their 80%, listen to this carefully, their 80% is becoming everyone else's 110%. And the people who are giving 110% are burning out, while those folks that are just giving 80% are just getting started. And there are times in our lives where 110% will be required. And don't you think that it's important that we have the capacity to give 110% when it really matters? Not every day, like we're being forced to believe, force-fed from the influencers, but when it matters, so that we can blow those people out of the water when it matters. So whether you're starting a business, this matters with any kind of endurance pursuit. And I'll tell you that anything worth pursuing that we're talking about here, where we're rising above fear, where we're pursuing things that make us better over time, these are long-term pursuits. Things like starting a business or investing or starting a fitness pursuit or involving yourself in a relationship. Those are long-term endurance pursuits. And if we're going to give 110% in that process, we're going to burn ourselves out really quickly. And we're going to give up on them really quickly. But if we give 80% and it has meaning for us, we're going to build that capacity. And I'll tell you that over time, if you give 80% over time consistently while challenging yourself just 5% beyond your comfort zone, that is where you're in the domain of discipline. You fall within the domain of discipline when your goal, when your desire, where your pursuit has a purpose and a meaning for you. You're in the domain of discipline when you are practicing consistently, challenging yourself just 5% beyond your comfort zone, and slowing down in order to get faster and more methodical, to be more accurate, to see what you need to see, to build the capacity to blow anyone else out of the water if you're competing, or just to make yourself better and continuously improve. And you practice that, you will stay disciplined. If you practice that discipline with something that means the world to you, you're not going to give up in shame. You're not going to be disappointed that you gave up or feel like your dreams are not possible. You're going to be at the cusp of your dreams, and you're going to be excited to achieve it, wondering what's next. What's the next level for me? And when you look back on your life, you're going to be really proud of what you achieved. So show that discipline, practice those parts of discipline, and practice it consistently. Challenge yourself just 5% beyond your comfort zone. Slow down 80%. That's the path to success. Thank you for joining me today. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.